Cody Rhodes returned to SmackDown to address his loss to John Cena at WrestleMania 41 and to also set up this tag team match coming up at Money in the Bank. Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso to take on John Cena and Logan Paul. All four parties were in the ring together. Did they give us what we needed from that particular interaction? I'll get to that here in just a few as we talk about this SmackDown review for May 30th, 2025. And we also had on this show the two Money in the Bank qualifying matches. And we're going to start there because I thought that was really the most notable thing coming out of this was what happened in the two, which to me, one was a winner that I kind of expected. The other was a little bit more of a surprise winner. And we'll start with the one that we expected. And of course, the show started off with Bianca Belair coming out in her hometown, Knoxville, Tennessee, and having Naomi interrupt her. And we get more of these sort of emotional back and forth between these two former best friends, Bianca and Naomi, and I like the way that they continue to play that up, right? It's all about kind of the heightened emotion when these two get in the ring together because they know what they've had before and they know what they've lost. And Naomi continuing to sort of point out all the things that could bring Bianca back to her level of happiness. Naomi broke into Bianca's house without her parents there and looked at the photo albums and saw how happy she was. It reminded her of exactly the way they were, right? And so I like the way they keep kind of setting that up. You even had Naomi take a big jab at Bianca after Bianca wanted no part of her, what she had to say. You had Naomi saying that she's going to put Bianca in a wheelchair just like her mother. So, again, the emotions really coming out between these two, and that did lead us into the Money in the Bank qualifier for the women's side. And I did think going into this, Naomi seemed like the most logical winner, just based on the fact that Nia Jax just got her title shot. It wasn't going to be Nia winning this match. Jade, you could obviously make the arguments for Jade Cargill winning this match just to put her in a higher profile, maybe move her a step closer if she wins Money in the Bank. Well, then, okay, you're pretty much knowing that Jade Cargill is going to be a women's world champion at some point because she's not going to have an unsuccessful cash-in. Well, you don't have to worry about that this year because it was Naomi winning the match, and I thought this was the right move, right? Because as we said, this whole thing with Naomi, it's been fresh in terms of giving her something different to do, giving her kind of a new sort of edge to this, character that she is in WWE right now after everything that happened with the big reveal of her attacking Jade. And I think this was the right call to have her win because she did lose the match at WrestleMania, right? And we usually know that's how this thing plays out. Based on the fact that Jade won at WrestleMania, it made sense to give Naomi kind of this big opportunity to now put her in the women's Money in the Bank match, which I would think, based on the lineup right now, you've got a lot of, I think, strong candidates. And we're going to talk about the contrast maybe with the men's side of things in just a second. But you have a lot of strong candidates to win the women's Money in the Bank. And I think Naomi should be right there in terms of one of those possibilities. Because if you do have her in that scenario, then she is, certainly in a situation where you start to tie in the long-term stuff with Bianca or Jade possibly being a champion of some sort. And so I like the idea of Naomi winning. And I think that these interactions they continue to have, Tiffany Stratton is your champion right now. You used to call it kind of the backstage stuff where Naomi went up to Tiffany, Alexa Bliss went up to Tiffany. So you're seeing all these challengers sort of come after her. But I like Naomi qualifying here, and I think that she's someone that will be very good in the match, as we know. She's been in these matches before, and I think she's just a very quality entertainer right now in WWE, both in the ring and with everything they're doing with the stuff with Bianca and Jade. So Naomi wins the Women's Money in the Bank qualifier. I think it was the right call, and I think it gets you kind of the most out of what you need from Naomi right now. Meanwhile, Nia Jax has had her opportunity. Jade Cargill is not going anywhere. She doesn't really need the Money in the Bank to be a legitimate women's title challenger, as we know. So Naomi wins, and she advances to join the others, which I said is a very stacked lineup right now of women in this women's Money in the Bank ladder match. All right, to the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. Qualifier, which involved Jacob Fatu, Carmelo Hayes, and Andrade. And I said I thought there was a difference in terms of the, maybe predictability of the two matches. This one, it pretty much seemed likely that you were not going to have Jacob Fatu winning. He's the United States champion, and that's where you got into the stuff where somehow Solo Sikoa was going to be the reason that Jacob Fatu did not win this match. And we knew it was going to be more of that inadvertent sort of scenario. It wasn't going to be just Solo turning on Jacob Fatu in a qualifying match on SmackDown. That wasn't going to be the big moment that this has all been building up towards over the past however long, right? You guys know we've done plenty of videos here on the channel talking about just the teases and the hints and everything along the way that is going to lead to this combustible situation between Solo and Jacob at some point in the future. It's always a bit of a slow burn sometimes, and that's kind of the way it is right now to get to that destination. But the addition of Jeff Cobb / JC Mateo has changed things a little bit, because now you've got Solo with sort of the muscle beside him of JC, and Jacob Fatu has kind of gone his own way here, even though they've been more aligned. And so you have Solo get up on the apron in this match. Solo wasn't good with just one of the moonsaults. He said, "Give me another, Jacob. Give me another moonsault." Listen, I know that Solo has always, as I said, not been everyone's favorite, but I just think when you let this guy kind of bring out the personality a little bit, like doing this kind of sort of halfway comedic type stuff where he's just, kind of leaning into the personality, it works for me. And I think just the way he's, trying to get Jacob to say the catchphrase and all this other stuff, I think we need more of that kind of Solo Sikoa. And, eventually we'll probably get that, more of that. Because as we said, remember, this is still a young guy in terms of, his main roster experience and just age, period. So I know, again, I've seen all the comments. I've seen all the backlash to Solo when he was the leader of this new version of the Bloodline. But I think with what they have him doing now, he's not in that prominent spot the way that he was. Yes, he's going to be in this match too, which, of course, adds a different layer to this by having him cost Jacob Fatu here inadvertently in some way, right? Well, now, all of a sudden, Solo's in the match. Jacob Fatu is not. Well, now Jacob can, raise the eyebrows a bit and wonder, was this intentional? You saw kind of the interaction after the match as well, where Jacob Fatu kind of telling him that he didn't need him and all this other stuff. Solo taking that a bit more seriously, maybe, than he has previously. So I like the way that they did this by having Solo play a role in Jacob Fatu not winning this match to qualify, because, Solo's in the match, Jacob Fatu isn't. So you would wonder, are you going to get kind of the flip of that at Money in the Bank next weekend, where somehow Jacob Fatu plays a role in Solo not winning that match? Could that happen? We'll see, but we know the eventual blow-up is going to happen between these two. That was a main theme, I thought, here of this match, and unsurprisingly, again, JC being kind of the middleman here in how this is all going to play out. And we said, getting an eventual match between Jacob Fatu and JC Mateo. Count me in on that one. That's a hoss fight. I take that one. That will be tremendous. But for now, Jacob Fatu loses. So it really came down to Carmelo and Andrade, right? And, I thought Carmelo was probably going to be the choice here, because I just thought that, the way they're kind of playing this thing up, I know he won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, and that's fine, but that's not Money in the Bank. Carmelo, I think, is in a position where, he has that opportunity to kind of raise his stock a bit. Even though he was the winner in that, we've seen him kind of in this back and forth with Aleister Black, in recent weeks. They've had some good matches and that kind of stuff. But to get more out of Carmelo, I thought this was one where maybe having him win, be in that match, it's a ladder match, having him interact with all the other guys, again, whether it's, looking at the potential with Penta, with Seth Rollins, and so forth, I thought maybe that would be a good possibility. Because to me, Andrade winning, there's nothing wrong with that. And it finally gives Andrade a little bit of that momentum that I don't really think he's had at all, since maybe that back and forth feud with Carmelo, the 7-match series that ended without a winner. I don't really, Andrade's really had any momentum on the WWE roster since he came back. So this does give him something to kind of, get into now and at least be one of the men who could win the match and go on to compete for the World Championship. It seems like a long shot, because I just don't know if you're putting Andrade in there with the other guys that we mentioned that have already qualified. Seth Rollins, Solo Sikoa, LA Knight, Penta. You're probably putting Andrade 5th on that list. And so, having him win, it's fine. I think Carmelo probably would have been a bit of a stronger, possibility to actually go into the match, and you feel like there is an argument to be made that Carmelo could actually win that match. But I think, with all this stuff going on with Carmelo and The Miz, The Miz is telling him run the play, execute the plan, all this other stuff. You've clearly got that tension, right, that's been existing between these two. And I think that's kind of a scenario now where we know that's going to be an eventual big blow up here between those two as well. Because as always in WWE, you can't be partners, you can't be friends unless you want to eventually destroy each other. That's how it works. So in this regard, I think you're going to have that where Carmelo probably going to come out of this as the babyface with The Miz. And then, we look at the other options eventually with Carmelo, maybe 3 months, 6 months down the road. That's where, does Trick Williams come up? Do you get those two aligned again, which I think would probably be best for both parties, to have those two maybe aligned together again, not just as a traditional tag team or anything, but to have those guys kind of, playing off each other. I think you could do something with that based on their history in NXT. So Andrade gets the win. He advances on to the Money in the Bank. And, like I said, a little surprised. I thought Carmelo may be the winner here. Didn't think Jacob Fatu was ever going to win. Seemed like they were going to go with the path of Solo somehow playing a role, or JC. And now you've got Andrade qualifying for the match. Should be good in that match. The interactions he could have with the others should be fine. Speaking of that, who else is going to qualify? Well, we know now that there is a Raw qualifying match coming up on Monday, as it will be CM Punk, AJ Styles, and El Grande Americano. It will be those three competing for that next spot in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. Who's it going to be coming out of it? We'll talk about that after Raw on Monday. But we know that's set. We know the women's qualifiers are set. And so now, Stephanie Vaquer, by the way, also in that women's qualifier. She's going to be in there with Ivy Nile and Liv Morgan. So that's your women's qualifier for Raw. Your men's qualifier, as we said, Punk, Styles, El Grande. Those are your spots that are going to be taken up after Monday's Raw. So there you go, your Money in the Bank winners. We know Naomi and Andrade advancing to join the matches. All right, before we get to the big main event segment here in just a minute, let's quickly talk about Jacob Fatu again, because Damian Priest set his sights on Jacob Fatu in this one, and you kind of had Priest coming out, mentioning all the stuff with Drew McIntyre. They finally gotten through this, even though he did kind of, give you a couple hints that they're wanting to turn Drew McIntyre maybe babyface here, because you did have Priest, as we always say. Anytime you have these sort of people in these kind of roles point out that the heel did something respectable, or at least earn their respect, then there's kind of that possibility that eventually, they get to that point. And Drew McIntyre, as we know, has been cheered just based on the fact that he's kind of been the guy spreading the truth. But it sounds like he's going to be out, at least sidelined for a little bit, taking some time off, however they're going to do it. But for now, Priest has set his sights on Jacob Fatu. Could that be a match that's added to Money in the Bank, which is already kind of filling up from a WWE standpoint? We know they usually don't like to do more than 5 or 6 matches on the card, but could that be something? You get the United States Championship match, Jacob Fatu, Damian Priest. It seems like we're headed towards that, just a matter of when they're going to do it. Could they put that in motion for Money in the Bank, or do they hold it off till afterwards as well? You got SmackDown, as we said. You got the Saturday night's main event coming up next month. The 2-night SummerSlam. There's a lot of shows on the horizon, but Damian Priest setting his sights on Jacob Fatu, and I think that's fine. Priest bringing up, hey, he wants to continue to be a champion, right? We don't expect Damian Priest to be in the World Heavyweight Championship picture again anytime in the near future. It's a very crowded scene. He had his run with the World Heavyweight title. Now you put him in a position where Jacob Fatu has elevated the United States Championship, right? He's brought that title up to where it feels like a huge deal. And so even though it's not a world championship, having him be in that position with Jacob Fatu makes it still feel pretty big. You got a former world champion. You got the guy who looks like a future world champion who has elevated the United States Championship. And so I like the way that they're going to do this. And we probably know, at least we think we know, who's going to win this match. But again, that's where the Solo stuff and JC stuff comes into play. To eventually get the belt off of Jacob Fatu so he can elevate himself up maybe into, again, the sort of higher picture with the World Championships or something like that. That's a possibility as well. But Damian Priest setting his sights on Jacob Fatu. So that's what, in addition to the tension with Solo and JC, Jacob Fatu's got to worry about that too, coming out of this particular show on SmackDown. All right, other matches on the show before we get into thoughts on the main event. JC did beat R-Truth, so if you thought R-Truth was getting the sustainable main event type push after his Saturday night's main event match against John Cena, not happening, as it was JC getting a nice win against Truth. Other matches, you had Zelina Vega and Alba Fire, so Zelina gets the win, so you're continuing the stuff with Chelsea Green, so they played up all that with Chelsea and wearing the mask and all this other stuff after she's just got her nose destroyed at Saturday night's main event. So Zelina wins the match. That feud's going to continue there, it seems like. You had Los Garza get a win over Rey Fenix and Javon Evans. And, this was kind of your setup for getting some of these parties that are going to be involved at the Worlds Collide show. On this particular show, Phoenix and Evans are going to be in that four-way match with Ethan Page and Laredo Kid. So you had them team up here. And I'm telling you, I'm going to start doing more NXT stuff on the channel. I've always talked about it, but now I'm probably more tapped into NXT than I have been in years. Javon Evans, he is, you can just see it. He's got those vibes, right? He's got some of those things that this guy is going to be an absolute star. He's not even close to the prime of his career yet. And so many, many years, at least, you're looking ahead and thinking this is one of your sort of cornerstone players on the WWE main roster. And to kind of give him, that opportunity. I know he got pinned here, but let's keep in mind he's been in NXT this entire time. You're going to give Los Garza a little bit of a push here. Ethan Page's involvement, there's a reason you can kind of play it up because he interfered. But Javon Evans, he is a superstar, and I'm telling you, he's got all the it factors you need to kind of be just a huge star. And if you watch Stand and Deliver, if you're not someone who didn't watch NXT regularly, if you watch that Stand and Deliver show during WrestleMania season, that main event between Obafemi, Trick Williams, and Javon Evans, it kind of showcased everything you need to know, not just about Evans, but all three of those guys and their potential on the main roster. So, Los Garza get the win here, but like seeing Javon Evans on this spot. I think that four-way at Worlds Collide with Page, Phoenix, Evans, and Laredo Kid will be pretty good. So, could be one of the best matches on the card. Could be the best match on the card, maybe. Although, Chad Gable and Vikingo should be pretty good as well. But again, the other matches, I think that was all the matches running through them. Yeah, so we run through all the matches. Meanwhile, the tag team division stuff also heating up on SmackDown. As we know, you didn't have any of those kind of big matches, although, as we mentioned, Los Garza got the win in that match. But elsewhere in the tag team, you had the big segment where the Street Profits, talking about how the tag team division's on fire. You got everybody coming out. You got all sorts of chaos, and then even more chaos as the Wyatt Six come out and destroy everyone. So they're really kind of continuing to set up the idea that this, SmackDown tag team division is as loaded as any. And from a numbers standpoint, it's way more loaded than Raw is, that's for sure. You don't have a lot of those sort of, what you feel like are sustainable teams on Raw right now. SmackDown's got a lot going on in the tag team division with the Street Profits, of course, the champions. But, you've added Candice LeRae to DIY. Motor City Machine Guns feel like they still, want to feel like they're in a position where they can get the titles back. As they noted, they haven't been beaten by the Street Profits necessarily yet either. Fraxium is in there kind of as the new shiny team that feels like that they're in a position where maybe they would have won it last week if not for the Wyatt Six. And then just adding the Wyatt Six back into the mix as well, that makes it more interesting to see what they're going to do. So lots going on. As usual, chaos with the tag team division, as has been the case for months here on SmackDown. So we'll see how that plays out moving forward. All right, let's talk about the main event, which was, again, the interaction with Cody Rhodes and John Cena, Logan Paul, and Jey Uso. It was kind of that point where we knew that Cody was going to have to address what happened at WrestleMania 41 at some point, right? And, he made his return at Saturday night's main event. You kind of have Cody coming out here, talking about how everything he went through and kind of questioning his title run. Even here, he's saying that, he had to ask a friend, was he a good champion? Was he someone that did the championship right? And, that friend brought up how all the things he had to go to, sort of unprecedented, everything he had to go through as the champion. And he brought up, everything from AJ Styles teasing retirement and then attacking Cody and having that first big feud, bringing up the final boss, The Rock, and everything about selling his soul and all that. And so then they got to the thing you had to address, which was Cody hesitating, right? And making him look like a fool, as we talked about after WrestleMania. Let's call it what it is. It is Cody Rhodes, the babyface, but it did not make him look great the way that they played it out. And so Cody addressing that was important here and basically making it very clear he will never do that again when it comes to John Cena. He will never hesitate when the opportunity presents itself to take down Cena and get that championship back. Cody's not going to do it. So he's given us his word he's not going to do that. So he can't. He can't do that again. And he knows it probably. WWE knows it. They can't have Cody do that again. So, you have that. Cody brings out Jey Uso. Then you have John Cena and Logan Paul interrupt. And really the segment becomes all about John Cena promoting Logan Paul as sort of the future of the industry, right? John Cena's on his farewell tour. Cena's going off into retirement. His time, the last time is now. But, it really went into Cena hyping up Logan Paul as the celebrity that's going to ruin wrestling, just like Cena's trying to ruin wrestling. Then it goes into Paul, talking about how Cena speaks the truth and all this other stuff. Paul saying he's going to be the inevitable face of the company. And that's really what this was all about. You just had these four guys talking. And eventually it got physical. These guys go after each other. The baby faces stand tall. Cody and Jay standing in the ring. They've taken out Cena and Logan Paul. But really, this was, I thought, a lot about just Cena promoting Logan Paul and kind of, doing the same thing where the whole theme of ruining wrestling, well, fans don't like Logan Paul. Even some of the locker room members don't like Logan Paul, and they've not shied away from that. And so it's Cena just kind of, doing some heel stuff here, getting boos, because if you don't want Cena to get cheered, aligning him with Logan Paul is one way to do it, because everybody's booing Logan Paul. And so I think that is, was clearly the intention here. But there's also one other thing we have to discuss. Because just as you have that, they immediately went to teasing already some of the tension between John Cena and Logan Paul. You had them kind of go face-to-face there for just a second, right? And so quickly, before they've even teamed up, and really they've only been interacting for, 2 weeks now, you've already got that sort of tease there that these two are not on the same page, and there's something that's going to eventually break them apart, which we all know is going to happen. Because, again, the whole goal now is to get to John Cena back to the good side, which you don't have a lot. I mean, you've got 6 months. That's it. Clock's into June now. You've got 6 months. That's it to be able to get John Cena back to the good side. And so, from that perspective, if you're looking at it here, you're certainly feeling like, all right, they're setting this up already, because if you do want to get John Cena cheered, putting him against Logan Paul is a good idea. My guess is the way they're doing this and why this feels like such a fast-moving thing is because you're going to have the tag team match at Money in the Bank. We'll make our predictions soon as to who we think is going to win that match. But you're going to have the tag team match. But coming out of that, several weeks later, you've got to get to Night of Champions, right? And your champion, John Cena, is going to be there. He's on the poster. They revealed it on, I think it was either Wednesday or Thursday. So Cena's on the poster. He's going to be fighting there in a match. And so are they just going to go to John Cena and Logan Paul that quickly? Or do you just do John Cena versus Jey Uso, right? Night of Champions, that could be a logical thing where you put the two champions against each other. You could do either one of those. And so my guess is, it seems pretty logical now, that if you're looking at the next two big shows for John Cena, Cena maybe versus Jey, Cena versus Logan Paul, I mean, those seem like matches that you're probably going to do. And could that be where Saturday night's main event, Night of Champions, those are your two spots for that? I think that's probably where we're headed, right? In terms of if you're kind of earmarking potentially the next two Cena singles matches, that could be it. Knowing that the two big ones are still waiting in the wings. And that's Cody Rhodes, which likely seems to be at SummerSlam. And then CM Punk at some point before the end of this retirement tour. Punk could be the final opponent, based on the fact that, as we said, it seems like Boston is going to be the destination for Cena's final match. And if that's the case, I think, as I've told you guys before, I like the idea of flipping it from Money in the Bank 2011, where you had Cena going into Chicago, Punk leaving with a championship, and everybody wondering what happens next. This time around, it could be Punk going into Boston and Cena holding the championship and maybe Punk winning it away from him. And that's kind of, such an ironic twist there from what happened 14 years ago. And so I think that's where we're going. And that's why they put the tension in here between John Cena and Logan Paul, is that you want to go ahead and set in motion the idea that John Cena versus Logan Paul is a match that is going to happen. And if you really think about it, Cena versus Paul in Saudi Arabia makes sense, because you're probably going to be in a situation where Cena is going to get cheered way more than he gets booed, because it is the last time, right, that he goes to Saudi Arabia in this kind of instance. So I think that is probably something where it would make sense to go ahead and set the tease in. It's going to feel pretty quick compared to most WWE storylines, but to have the tension, these two can't coexist maybe at Money in the Bank. Coming out of it, somehow you have Cena versus Logan Paul. Is that the moment where Cena officially turns back to the good side? I don't know. I think maybe it's a little bit of a longer thing because you've still, as we said, got to get to Cena versus Cody. To me, that feels like the point where Cena has to make kind of that big decision. And do we see that next layer of Cena going back to the way he used to be coming out of that match? That feels like the moment you do that. But Cena versus Logan Paul at Night of Champions would seem like a logical possibility just based on the way that they're setting this up. But as for this segment, I just didn't really think there was a lot to it other than the fact that you kind of got Cena booed a bit by putting over Logan Paul. You set in the tease there of a Cena-Logan Paul match, and you're really just getting us towards what's going to happen at the tag team match. You did have Cody, again, finally addressing what happened at WrestleMania 41, which is important based on the story. But other than that, kind of just your, hey, WWE segment in 2025, the TKO era, put your biggest stars in the ring, let them go face-to-face, let them talk, and we'll give you our money. That's kind of what it comes down to. So this SmackDown, which was 3 hours, which I'm sure you saw the reports out there, there were many people thinking that this was going to go back to a 2-hour show at the 1st of June. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case anymore. It's going to be a 3-hour SmackDown for a while, at least for the foreseeable future. So, as always, I think there are some things that you can certainly look at and say, well, that was there because they needed to get to those 3 hours. Otherwise, some significant development storyline-wise for all the things we mentioned with the Money in the Bank qualifiers. So Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, Damian Priest, Jacob Fatu, and the main event stuff that's going to lead us towards what's going to happen, not just in the match at Money in the Bank, but also some singles matches in store between all of those parties in the ring there. So there you go, guys. Some thoughts on SmackDown. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts. Give me your prediction, your grades. What would you score this week's edition of WWE SmackDown? What did you think of the show? Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. Hope you're enjoying kind of some of the new content we're doing here at the channel. And again, let me know your thoughts on this week's WWE SmackDown. What did you like? What didn't you like? Give me your grades and scores in the comments below.